Dr. Sarah Chen stood in the observation deck of the stellar horizons, watching the swirling purple storms of the gas giant below. Her fingers absently traced the edges of the small metallic cube in her coat pocket. Humanity's latest gift to the galaxy, though her alien crewmates didn't know it yet. Engineer Chen, your presence is requested in the main engineering bay, the ship's AI announced, its voice carrying the distinctive harmonic overtones preferred by the Vexari who had designed it. Chief Engineer Catal indicates it is a matter of some urgency. Sarah smiled, knowing exactly what had prompted this summons. The ship's power diagnostics would have just completed their monthly cycle, showing the subtle modifications she'd been implementing over the past few weeks, preparations for what she was about to unveil. The engineering bay doors parted with a soft hiss, revealing Catal's imposing figure. The Vexari chief engineer's crystalline exoskeleton caught the light as they turned all four eyes toward her. Their neutral expression didn't fool Sarah. After 2 years working together, she could read the subtle shifts in Catal's bioluminescent patterns that indicated anxiety. Explain these power grid modifications, Catal demanded, gesturing to the holographic display with one of their secondary arms. You've reconfigured the auxiliary systems without authorization. Sarah reached into her pocket and withdrew the cube, placing it on the central workbench. Actually, I was hoping to demonstrate why. This is what I've been working on with the Sol Institute. We're calling it the Helios Core. Catal's bioluminescence flickered in what Sarah recognized as skepticism. Another human invention. Your species barely mastered fusion power a century ago. True, Sarah acknowledged, activating the cube with a precise sequence of taps. But we've gotten pretty good at miniaturizing things. The cube hummed to life, a soft golden glow emanating from its center. This is a fully contained, portable fusion reactor, about the power output of a small star, hence the name. The Vexari engineer's dismissive posture shifted to one of intense focus as their sensors registered the energy readings. Impossible. The containment field requirements alone are handled by a hybrid system that combines magnetic containment with gravity manipulation, Sarah explained, bringing up the technical specifications on her tablet. We borrowed some concepts from Vexari field theory, actually, combined them with good old-fashioned human brute force engineering. Before Catal could respond, the ship's lights flickered and died, plunging them into darkness broken only by the gentle glow of the Helios Core and Catal's own bioluminescence. What did you do? Catal demanded, their patterns shifting to alarm. Nothing, Sarah replied, already checking the ship's systems through her neural interface. Main reactors gone into emergency shutdown. Looks like a cascade failure in the antimatter containment system. The backup power should have kicked in immediately, but Sarah knew it wouldn't. She'd made sure of that, though not in the way Catal probably suspected. Sometimes the best way to prove a point was to create the perfect opportunity to make it. All backup systems are offline, Catal announced, their voice carrying the harmonics of barely controlled panic. We have approximately 17 minutes of life support remaining on emergency reserves. Sarah picked up the Helios Core, its warm light casting soft shadows across her face. Or we could test this now. The modifications I made were to allow for an emergency power transfer. We can hook this directly into the ship's grid. Catal's crystalline features were unreadable, but their bioluminescent patterns swirled in complex patterns that Sarah had learned meant they were calculating probabilities. The risk is lower than letting life support fail, Sarah finished. I know it seems crazy to trust human technology with something this critical, but sometimes the best solutions come from unexpected places. For 3/10 seconds, Catal stood motionless. Then their patterns shifted to resolution. Do it. Sarah's fingers flew across the cube's surface, extending the power coupling she'd designed. Catal moved with surprising speed, helping her make the necessary connections to the ship's power grid. As the final connection clicked into place, Sarah held her breath and activated the transfer sequence. The Helios Core's glow intensified, And for a moment, Sarah worried she'd miscalculated something in the power conversion ratios. Then the engineering bay's lights flickered back to life, followed by the steady hum of restored systems. Power restored to all critical systems, the ship's AI announced. Auxiliary power source detected. Current output exceeding standard emergency backup levels by 327%. Kittle's patterns had shifted to something Sarah had never seen before, perhaps amazement. How long can it maintain this output? At current levels? About 3 months, Sarah said, unable to keep the pride from her voice. Longer if we cycle it with the main reactor once we get it back online. And this is just the prototype. The production models will be even more efficient. The Vexeri engineer's primary hands moved in a gesture Sarah recognized as their equivalent of running fingers through hair, a sign of mental recalibration. You humans, you were supposed to be the primitive ones. The newcomers, how did you develop this? Sarah shrugged, a gesture she knew Kittal had learned to interpret correctly. We had to. Our first attempts at interstellar travel taught us we couldn't always rely on massive infrastructure. Sometimes you need solutions you can hold in your hands. She patted the gently humming cube, even if that solution is a star in a box. As emergency teams began arriving to assess the reactor situation, Sarah watched Kittal examining the Helios core with all 4 eyes, their patterns showing intense interest. She knew that by ship's dawn, word of humanity's latest innovation would begin spreading through the crew. By the end of the week, it would reach other ships and stations. Sarah smiled, thinking of the dozens of similar cores currently being prepared back on Earth. Sometimes the best way to prove humanity's worth to the galactic community wasn't through grand gestures, but through simple, elegant solutions to universal problems. After all, everyone needed light in the darkness. The news spread through the stellar horizons like a solar flare. Within days of the reactor incident, Sarah found herself fielding questions from crew members she'd never even spoken to before. But it was the ship's xenobiologist, Dr. Angstara, who discovered the first unexpected application of the Helios core. Engineer Chin. The Meridian's melodious voice echoed through the corridor. Sarah turned to see the avian alien gliding toward her, iridescent feathers rippling with excitement. Your sun device. It produces the full spectrum of solar radiation, yes. Sarah nodded, falling into step beside the floating xenobiologist. That's right. We designed it to mimic Sol's output as closely as possible. Why? Instead of answering, Xterra guided her toward the ship's hydroponics bay. The usual bright agricultural lights were dark, replaced by the warm glow of a Helios core suspended above the plants. But it was the vegetation itself that made Sarah stop short. The alien crops, notoriously difficult to grow in artificial environments, were thriving. Plants that normally took months to mature were already heavy with fruit after just a few days of exposure to the core's light. I borrowed one of the spare units, Angstera admitted, preening nervously. The wavelength variety matches their native sun almost perfectly. We've never achieved this growth rate with standard agricultural lighting. Sarah walked between the rows, examining the bursting pods of Vexeri nutrient fruits and the delicate spiral stalks of Meridian skywheat. This is incredible. We never even considered agricultural applications during development. Humans, came Kittal's familiar harmonic voice from the doorway, always solving one problem and accidentally solving 3 more. The chief engineer's crystalline form reflected the core's light as they entered. Which is fortunate, because we have received a rather interesting transmission from Central Command. Sarah's stomach tightened. She'd been waiting for the bureaucratic response to her invention. Good interesting or bad interesting? The Galactic Agricultural Consortium has requested immediate information about the Helios core. Tull's bioluminescent patterns showed amusement. Apparently, word of Dr. Angstera's experiment has already reached them. They are particularly interested in its applications for terraform-grade agricultural development. That's not all. Angstera chimed in, floating closer. The medical division is asking about therapeutic applications, something about the specific radiation spectrum having healing properties for several species. Sarah leaned against a thriving nutrient vine, her mind racing. The core had been developed as a power source, a way to prove human engineering still had something to offer the galactic community. But this was expanding far beyond her original vision. Engineer Chen, the ship's AI interrupted. Captain Vexley requests your presence on the bridge. Priority 1. The bridge was unusually crowded when Sarah arrived. Captain Vexley, a towering Vexari with battle-scarred crystalline plating, stood before the main view screen. The image showed a massive agricultural colony ship, its biological hull gleaming in the light of a distant sun. Ah, Engineer Chen, the captain's harmonics carried both pride and concern. The colony ship Verdant Dawn is requesting emergency assistance. Their primary agricultural systems are failing due to a solar radiation deficiency. They asked specifically for us, or rather, for your invention. Sarah felt the weight of every alien eye on her. How many cores would they need? Their ship is home to over 10,000 colonists, Kittle said from behind her. The agricultural sections alone span several cubic kilometers. We only have 3 spare cores, Sarah said, running calculations in her head. But if we modify them to work in parallel, amplify the output. She turned to Kittle. Remember how you said we solved problems accidentally? I think it's time we did it on purpose. The next 12 hours were a blur of calculations, modifications, and careful testing. Sarah, Kittle, and a team of engineers worked to reconfigure the spare Helios cores, pushing their design far beyond its original specifications. Terra provided crucial data about optimal radiation levels for various crop species, while other crew members contributed insights from their own specialties. Finally, Sarah stood in the Verdant Dawn's main agricultural chamber, watching as their modified core array came online. The massive space filled with warm, life-giving light, and the ship's biological sensors registered immediate improvement in the failing crops. Remarkable. The colony ship's agricultural director, a photosynthetic chlorin, whispered. Their leaf-like appendages stretched toward the light. We expected human engineering to be cruder, less elegant. We had good teachers, Sarah replied, watching Kittle adjust the final power settings. Humanity's greatest strength isn't just solving problems. It's learning from everyone around us, combining different approaches in new ways. As they returned to the stellar horizons, Sarah received a priority message from Earth. The Sol Institute was already incorporating the agricultural modifications into the next generation of Helios cores. Medical research teams were beginning trials for therapeutic applications, and there were rumors that even the notoriously tech-skeptical ancestral worlds were showing interest. You know, Kittle said as they watched the colony ship recede into the distance, their patterns showing thoughtful consideration. When you first arrived on this ship, many of us wondered what humans could possibly teach species who had been crossing the stars for millennia. Sarah smiled, remembering her own nervousness those first few days. And now we wonder what else you will teach us when you are not even trying to. Kittle's patterns shifted to something Sarah had learned to recognize as respect. Perhaps that is the most valuable lesson of all. The Helios core hummed softly in the background, its warm light a reminder that sometimes the smallest gifts could cast the longest shadows. And somewhere in the vast expanse of space, a colony ship sailed on, its gardens bathed in the light of a human-made sun, growing food for thousands who would never know the name of the species that had saved them, but would feel the warmth of their innovation nonetheless. The first sign of trouble came during what should have been a routine supply stop at Outpost 7, a sprawling space station at the edge of Vexari space. Sarah was running diagnostics on the modified Helios core array when the station's security alert blared through the ship's communications system. All vessels, be advised. The AI's voice was pitched with urgency. Unauthorized access detected in docking ring 3. Security protocols engage. Sarah's neural interface pinged with a priority message from Kittle. Engineering Bay. Now. She found the chief engineer's crystalline form pulsing with agitated bioluminescent patterns. Captain Vexley stood beside them, their battle-scarred plating reflecting the soft glow of the engineering bay's emergency lights. "We've identified the intruders." The captain's harmonics were grim. "Shadowtech operatives. They're after the Helios core specifications." Sarah's blood ran cold. Shadowtech was a notorious black market technology consortium, known for stealing innovations and selling weaponized versions to the highest bidder. How did they even know about the cores? The agricultural applications weren't exactly subtle. Cutall's patterns showed frustration. A human-made sun that can power ships, grow food, and heal the sick. The galaxy noticed. The ship shuddered as something impacted the hull. The captain's crystalline plates shifted in what Sarah had learned was their version of a scowl. "They're trying to breach the engineering section directly." "Clever. Most of our security forces are deployed to protect the bridge. They don't know humans very well, do they?" Sarah was already moving to the main console, fingers flying across the holographic interface. "Cutall, remember how you said we solve problems accidentally?" The Vexeri engineer's patterns shifted to curiosity. "What are you planning?" "The Helios core doesn't just mimic solar radiation," Sarah explained, making rapid adjustments to the containment field. "It mimics everything about a star, including its electromagnetic properties, and what happens when you suddenly vary a star's magnetic field." Kittle's patterns flashed with sudden understanding. "Solar flares." "Exactly. Captain, I need authorization to disable the safety protocols on cores 2 through 5. Captain Vexley's primary eyes fixed on her. "The risk to our own systems is less than the risk of this technology being weaponized," Sarah finished. "Trust me, please." A moment of silence, broken only by the sound of cutting tools against the hull. "Then, do it." Sarah's fingers danced across the console, bypassing safety systems she'd helped design. "Cutall, I need you to modulate the containment fields on my mark. Captain, you might want to warn the crew to shield their electronics." The hull breach alarm screamed as the Shadowtech operatives cut through the final layer. Sarah could see their shadows through the sparking gap. Humanoid figures in advanced stealth suits. "Now." Sarah slammed her hand down on the activation sequence. The Helios cores pulsed in unison, their gentle golden glow suddenly intensifying to a blinding white. The electromagnetic pulse that followed was precisely calculated, powerful enough to fry unshielded electronics, but contained within the engineering section. The intruders' stealth suits failed spectacularly, leaving them visible and vulnerable. More importantly, their neural interfaces, the core of their operation, were completely fried. "Security teams to engineering," the captain ordered, their voice carrying satisfaction. "Well done, Engineer Chen." As station security detained the disabled operatives, Sarah began restoring the cores to their normal operation. She noticed Kittle studying her with all 4 eyes, their patterns showing a complex emotion she couldn't quite read. "You knew," the Vexeri engineer said finally. "When you designed the cores, you knew they could be used this way." Sarah nodded slowly. Humanity learned the hard way that every tool can be a weapon, and every weapon can be a tool. The trick is building in protections while pretending you haven't. "Your species continues to surprise us," Captain Vexley observed. "Most races would have designed this as a weapon first, then found peaceful applications. You did the opposite." "Not exactly," Sarah corrected, watching the cores return to their familiar golden glow. "We designed it to help people. The defensive capabilities are just insurance, a reminder that underestimating humanity usually ends badly." News of the attempted theft spread quickly through the station. Sarah spent the next few hours answering questions from station security and filing reports with both Ship Command and the Sol Institute. But it was the message from Earth that really caught her attention. "They want us to demonstrate the defensive applications of the Galactic Security Council," she told Cutall later, as they worked to repair the minor damage from their impromptu defense system. Apparently, several worlds are interested in helioscore arrays as part of their planetary defense networks. Kittle's patterns showed amusement. So your peaceful power source is becoming a symbol of military deterrence as well. How very human. Sarah shrugged, calibrating a power coupling. Sometimes the best way to keep the peace is to make sure everyone knows exactly what you're capable of. Besides, she grinned, wait until they see what else it can do. There's more. Kittle's patterns shifted to alarm. There's always more, Sarah said, thinking of the research teams back on Earth working on new applications. That's another thing about humans. We never stop improving things. As they worked, Sarah could feel the subtle warmth of the cores, like distant suns watching over them. In trying to steal this technology, Shadowtech had inadvertently helped demonstrate its full potential to the galaxy. Sometimes, she reflected, the best defense wasn't just about power or technology, but about showing others that there were always consequences to underestimating humanity's ingenuity. And somewhere in the vast network of galactic communication channels, word was spreading. The humans hadn't just brought a sun in a box to the stars. They'd brought a reminder that sometimes the most peaceful species could also be the most dangerous to cross. The Galactic Security Council chamber was unlike anything Sarah had ever seen. Crystalline spires curved up into darkness, their surfaces alive with flowing data streams. Representatives from 100 species filled the tiered seating, their varied forms creating a living tapestry of galactic diversity. The Council recognizes Engineer Sarah Chen of Earth, announced the Session Master, a being of pure energy contained within an ornate mechanical frame. You may proceed with your demonstration. Sarah stood at the center of the chamber, a helioscore hovering beside her. Kittle and Captain Vexley flanked her, their crystalline forms adding to the chamber's ethereal atmosphere. Distinguished representatives, Sarah began, her voice steady despite her racing heart. 3 months ago, humanity introduced the helioscore as a simple power source. Since then, it has proven to be much more. The core beside her pulsed with gentle golden light as she continued. You've all received reports about its applications in agriculture, medicine, and planetary defense. But today, I'm here to show you something else. She gestured to Kittle, who activated a holographic display. This is Outpost Sigma-7, a deep space research station in the Outer Rim. The display showed a station shrouded in perpetual darkness, far from any star. For decades, it's been powered by antimatter reactors requiring constant resupply. Now, the image shifted, showing the same station surrounded by a network of helioscores, their combined light creating an artificial day cycle. A self-sustaining array of cores provides power, light, and radiation shielding. The station's efficiency has increased by 300%, and supply costs have dropped by 80%. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. A Meridian representative spread their iridescent wings. And the energy requirements. That's the beautiful part, Sarah smiled. The cores are self-sustaining. Once activated, they'll run for decades with minimal maintenance. We're already establishing manufacturing facilities in human space to meet growing demand. Which brings us to the real reason for this session. The Session Master intoned. The question of technology sharing and control. An elder Vexori rose, their crystalline form bearing the complex patterns of a High Council member. Humanity has achieved in months what other species have sought for centuries: practical, portable fusion power. The implications for galactic development are significant. Too significant to be controlled by a single species, came a sharp voice. Sarah turned to see a Shadowtech representative, their cybernetic implants gleaming. This technology should be shared freely. You mean stolen freely? Captain Vexley's harmonics carried carefully controlled anger. Like your operatives attempted. The chamber erupted in overlapping voices and translated signals. The Session Master's energy form flared, restoring order. Engineer Chen, what is humanity's position on this matter? Sarah took a deep breath. This was the moment the Sol Institute had prepared her for. The Helios core technology will be shared. through proper channels with proper safeguards. We're already establishing joint research facilities with Vexeri and Meridian scientists. But there's something you should understand first. She activated the core beside her, but instead of its usual golden glow, it projected a complex quantum matrix into the air. What you're seeing isn't just a power source or a miniature star. It's a key to understanding how humanity approaches innovation. The matrix shifted, showing the core's internal workings. We didn't create this by following established scientific principles. We looked at what everyone said was impossible, then found ways to prove them wrong. The core works because we combine technologies in ways no one had considered, because we weren't bound by traditional thinking. You're suggesting the elder Vexeri's patterns showed intense interest, that the true value isn't just the technology itself. Exactly. Sarah nodded. The Helios core is valuable, but the way we developed it, the human approach to problem solving, that's what could really benefit the galaxy. We're offering both. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Then the Meridian representative spoke again. There are reports of other human innovations beginning to emerge. Things that shouldn't be possible, according to conventional wisdom. Sarah's smile widened slightly. The cores were just the beginning. Back on Earth, we're already working on. She paused for effect. Well, let's just say artificial suns aren't the only impossible things humans are good at making possible. The session master's energy form pulsed thoughtfully. This council must consider the broader implications, but for now, we recognize humanity's right to manage this technology's distribution with appropriate oversight. As the session concluded, Sarah found herself surrounded by representatives eager to discuss collaboration opportunities. But it was Catal's comment that stuck with her. You humans, the Vexeri engineers' patterns showed what Sarah had learned to recognize as amazement. You didn't just bring us a sun in a box. You brought us a whole new way of seeing the universe. Later, aboard the Stellar Horizons, Sarah received a priority message from Earth. The Sol Institute had approved the release of their next project. She smiled, thinking of the reactions it would cause. The Helios core had opened the door. Now it was time to show the galaxy what else humanity could do. Captain, she called over the ship's comm. How would you feel about being the first to test something we're calling quantum phase manipulation? The captain's reply carried harmonics of both excitement and resignation. Engineer Chen, I suspect you're about to show us another impossible thing. Not impossible, Sarah corrected, watching the Helios core's gentle glow. Just not impossible yet. 1 year after the Galactic Security Council demonstration, Sarah stood in the observation dome of the New Horizons Research Station, watching ships arrive for the first Galactic Innovation Summit. The station itself was her latest pride and joy. A massive structure powered entirely by a sophisticated network of Helios cores, their golden light creating a perfect artificial day cycle. Still hard to believe sometimes, isn't it? Call's familiar harmonic voice came from behind her. The Vexeri engineer's crystalline form had new patterns etched into it, marks of their recent promotion to Director of Xenotechnology Integration. That we went from one small core to this. Sarah gestured at the station around them. Or that we're about to host representatives from every major spacefaring civilization. Both. Kittel's patterns showed amusement. Though I was thinking about how you humans have changed galactic society in just 1 year. Sarah nodded, watching a Meridian ship dock with graceful precision. The elegant vessel's hull incorporated Helios core technology into its very structure, allowing it to generate its own defensive fields. We've all changed. That's the point, isn't it? The station's AI announced the arrival of another delegation, and Sarah turned to see Captain, now Admiral, Vexley entering the dome. Their battle-scarred crystalline form now bore the complex insignia of the Combined Fleet Command. Engineer Chen, the Admiral's harmonics carried warmth, or should I say Director of Human Galactic Integration. Sarah smiled at her new title. Just Sarah is fine. Admiral, how are the new ships performing? Exceptionally well. The combined Helios core and quantum phase systems have revolutionized our defensive capabilities. The Admiral's patterns showed pride. Though I suspect that's not why you gathered us all here today. No, Sarah agreed, turning back to the viewport. It's time for the next step. The summit chamber filled quickly, representatives from dozens of species, each changed in some way by the introduction of human innovation. Sarah took her place at the central podium, the familiar weight of a Helios core hovering beside her. Distinguished delegates, she began, a year ago, humanity introduced a simple power source that many said shouldn't have been possible. Today, Helios core technology helps power ships, grows food, heals the sick, and protects worlds. She paused, looking around the chamber, but more importantly, it showed us all something valuable, that innovation doesn't have to follow established paths, that sometimes the best solutions come from combining different perspectives in unexpected ways. The core beside her pulsed, projecting a hologram of a DNA-like structure, but one that twisted in impossible ways. This is why we've gathered you here. The Sol Institute has developed something new, a way to encode technological information directly into quantum-stable molecular structures. The chamber erupted in excited murmurs as she continued. We call it the Genesis Protocol. It allows us to share not just finished technologies, but the entire process of their development. Every false start, every failure, every breakthrough, all preserved in a form that can be studied, understood, and built upon. A Shadowtech representative, a different one from the previous year, leaned forward. You're offering to share your research methods. All of them. More than that, Sarah smiled. We're proposing to create a new kind of library, one where every species can contribute their own innovation protocols. Imagine combining Vexeri crystalline computing with Meridian biotechnology and human quantum engineering. Imagine solutions we haven't even dreamed of yet. The elder Vexeri who had spoken at the Security Council rose. You're not just changing how we use technology, you're changing how we develop it. Exactly, Sarah confirmed. The Helios core proved that we're stronger together than apart. Now it's time to take that lesson further. She gestured, and the hologram expanded to show a network of interconnected research stations. We're establishing innovation hubs throughout the galaxy. Each one will be a place where different species can work together, sharing their unique approaches to problem solving. The Genesis Protocol will preserve every discovery, making it available to future generations. And humanity would manage this network? Someone asked. No, Sarah shook her head. We'll help build it, but it belongs to all of us. That's the whole point. We're not here to leave the galaxy. We're here to learn with it. As the implications sank in, the chamber filled with excited discussion. Sarah saw Kittle's patterns showing an emotion she'd never seen before. Hope, maybe, or something beyond that. Later, as the summit's first day drew to a close, Sarah stood with Kittle and Admiral Vexley in the observation dome, watching the station's artificial sun set in a carefully calculated cycle. You know, Kittle said thoughtfully, when you first brought that little sun in a box to our ship, I thought it was just another power source. I never imagined it would lead to this. Neither did I, Sarah admitted. But that's the beauty of innovation, isn't it? You never really know where a good idea will lead. And where do you think this will lead? Admiral Vexley asked, gesturing at the gathered ships outside. Sarah watched the Helios core network shimmer, creating a perfect twilight. Honestly, I have no idea. And that's the most exciting part. Because in the end, she realized bringing the sun in a box to the stars hadn't just been about providing light or power or protection. It had been about showing the galaxy that impossible things were possible if you were willing to think differently, work together, and never stop pushing the boundaries of what could be done. And as she watched representatives from 100 worlds begin to share their own impossible ideas, Sarah knew that the real chain reaction hadn't been in the fusion cores at all. It had been in the minds and hearts of everyone who realized that sometimes the best way to light up the darkness was to work together to build something new. The artificial sun set on the first day of the summit, but across the galaxy, countless new dawns were just beginning.